So there's been a development and update in the NEC lawsuit. This is the necrotizing enterocolitis lawsuit. This is where babies, infants, were born and they were born premature. And so they were given cow-based formula, or many of them were given cow-based formula while in the NICU. And there's an argument with really powerful, strong science showing a positive correlation between being given the cow-based formula. This is Abbott Laboratories and Mead Johnson, Similac Enfamil cow-based formula to babies in the NICU. Okay, so the second bellwether trial, this would be an example trial taken from around 1,400 plus cases, almost 1,700 cases, give or take, and given as an example in a consolidated effort in what's called an MDL. That's a multi-district litigation. So you have Judge Pallmeyer gets to look at all of these lawsuits, and they take an example, 5 or so of those cases. Those are called the bellwether trials, and these are cases that will be used to understand more about what every one of these individuals might look like. So these are all brought forward in individual levels, and everyone has their own individual case. However, they're consolidated so that, a judge and the defense and the plaintiffs can wrap their heads around this a lot better. So the second bellwether just happened. Judge Pallmeyer dismissed it, saying that the expert was unable to give effective reasoning as to how there was a positive connection, and if that child that had developed necrotizing enterocolitis in the lawsuit was actually linked to Abbott Laboratories. Okay. It's a loss, okay? It's a loss. It's a loss for the plaintiff bar, which is the individuals who were hurt. It's more than that, and I want to make sure we're continuing to humanize this element, because that's one battle in a bigger war. What I mean by that is these aren't just, numbers. These aren't just babies who, we can't do anything about this. These are real people. And we talk to these mothers, these fathers, these guardians every day, literally every day. That's our job, right? We talk to them every day, and we're having conversations about how their child was inflicted with this horrible necrotizing enterocolitis is a often fatal infliction. And a lot of times, even if it's not fatal, it's long term, right? You're suffering with this for perpetuity, forever. And that's children that were hurt. And it was preventable, right? So all that had to happen was that Abbott and Mead put a warning out there that says, hey, this is safe for full-term children, not safe for premature children. And instead, this turns into this big war over whether or not there was a need for a warning on the label, when there's so much science showing that a human-based milk, a human milk formula, a fortifier, for instance, would have been better, right? So in the absence of a mother's natural milk, there are safer alternatives for the situation of a non-fully developed infant. That's the argument. That's it. And you have these multi-billion-dollar companies saying frivolous lawsuits, not important, and they're fighting tooth and nail so that these individual lawyers look bad when they're just saying, look, it's not necessarily the fault of the doctors or the attending nurses in the NICU, because they weren't known. This is not known universally in the medical industry because there's no warning, right? If you put a warning, then people can make better decisions. And that's what this lawsuit's about. Holding companies accountable for gross negligence, holding them accountable for hurting people, for hurting literal babies, right? And that's the problem. So I know this is a bit of a rant, but I want people to know that this lawsuit's not over. We might take a loss, and that happens. But the war is far from over. We're going to battle tooth and nail to ensure that we are, vanguards for people who can't actually speak for themselves. Babies, mothers who are, frantically trying to afford medical bills and things that are just piling up, just care for their children. And if their children has passed, like, rebuilding these families, being able to move forward and be like, hey, you can't put a price on someone's head, obviously, but you can at least hold them accountable to the point where they actually can think twice about not putting a warning on the label, or think twice about not being held accountable. That's what this lawsuit's about. And the individual lawyers are fighting very hard to ensure this happens. We are, for lack of a better term, the barbarians of the gate, banging on the gate saying, hey, multi-billion-dollar corporation, you're hurting the people here, and we're coming to make sure that we are giving them a voice, giving them a chance to be heard in court, and we're here to represent these individuals and fight relentlessly to ensure they get the justice they need. You saw some people who actually commented on my last video for necrotizing enterocolitis. These are mothers, crying about their children and how that could have been prevented. And that's why we do what we do, man. Some of these lawsuits you can see here, hey, look, they can go either way, and we do our best to do a good job. This is a pretty I'm trying not to get too emotional here. These are children. We're trying to ensure that the parents are armed with knowledge and information moving forward. There's children born today, and that there's no warning out there right now, so that we're raising awareness that this exists so it doesn't keep happening. And we're trying to stop this from happening, and we're trying to help the families who were impacted rebuild their lives and afford medical bills, afford everything that's going on. So we love you guys. Don't give up hope. This is still going. It's a loss. Look, even some of the best NBA teams of all time, they lost a few, right? Jordan lost 10 games or so. I mean, it can happen in his best season ever, right? It can happen that you still lose bellwether trial, but you win the war. And we're just asking to resolve it quickly. Hopefully we'll see some good results. Judge Pallmeyer can be very fair as well, and we know that this can go our way as well in the future. So don't give up hope. I just want to make sure that anyone reading this right now, or reading this news, or listening to this video, you're not losing hope and you're not getting too disheartened. This is one of the longer videos I've done. I'm trying not to get too emotional. I love you guys, and I want you to be informed and stay safe. Take care.